All right, welcome to this explainer. Grab a seat and get ready because today we're going to channel our inner physicists and uncover the invisible foundation of the modern world. I mean, have you ever actually wondered how your smartphone processes millions of calculations in literally seconds, or how a tiny LED lights up with just a minuscule battery? Well, the secret lies in a very special class of materials. If you want to understand modern physics and how our digital universe actually breathes, this is exactly where it all begins. And just to give you an idea of the sheer scale and importance of what we're talking about today, 100 billion. Let that sink in. More than 100 billion semiconductor chips are manufactured every single year. It is, without a doubt, one of the most absolutely critical technologies humanity has ever developed. Without them, there's no internet, no smartphones, no space exploration, and definitely no electric vehicles. So here's our lesson plan for today. First, the basics. Then, energy bands and toll gates. 3. Doping. Meet the characters. 4. The magical PN junction. 5. The blackboard math. And finally, real-world applications. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the basics. So, what exactly is a semiconductor? To wrap our heads around that, imagine electricity flowing through materials, kind of like water flowing through pipes. Some materials, like copper, are essentially wide-open pipes. Water just flows freely. Others, like rubber, are completely blocked pipes. But semiconductors, they behave like smart valves. We can actually control them with temperature, light, or an electric field to either allow or completely stop that flow. This controllability is literally their superpower. And we didn't just figure this out overnight. The journey spans almost 2 centuries. Back in 1833, the legendary Michael Faraday noticed that silver sulfide behaved weirdly. Unlike metals, it conducted electricity better when it got hot. Fast forward to 1874, and Carl Ferdinand Braun discovered that some crystals only let current flow in one direction. But the world truly changed in 1947, when Bell Labs invented the first transistor, finally replacing those bulky, fragile vacuum tubes. Then, by the late 1950s, we figured out how to cram multiple transistors onto a single piece of silicon, birthing the integrated circuit, or IC. Moving right along to Section 2, energy bands and toll gates. To really understand how these smart valves actually work, we've got to look at the physics. In quantum mechanics, electrons inside solids can't just have any random energy. They're restricted to specific bands. The two that matter for electricity are the valence band, where electrons are basically stuck to their atoms, and the conduction band, where they can flow freely. The space in between them? That's called the band gap. Conductors have basically a zero band gap, so electrons flow super easily. Insulators have a massive gap, so electrons are completely trapped. Semiconductors, though, sit right in the sweet spot. They have a small, controllable band gap. Think of it kind of like highway toll gates. If you're driving on a conductor highway, all the gates are wide open. You just zoom right through. On an insulator highway, the gates are completely locked shut. Nobody gets past. But a semiconductor, that's a highway with controllable toll gates. Depending on the situation, like say adding just a bit of voltage, we can choose exactly when to open those gates and let the electrons drive right on through. Okay, part 3, doping. Meet the characters. Pure semiconductors, like pure silicon, honestly, they're kind of boring on their own. They don't conduct very well at all. To make them useful, we have to inject some characters into them through a manufacturing process called doping. Our first character is the N-type semiconductor. We create this by taking pure silicon and deliberately injecting a tiny amount of impurity atoms, like phosphorus or arsenic. These guys have 5 outer electrons instead of silicon's 4. That 5th electron doesn't have a bonding partner, so it's totally free to wander around. Think of this N-type material like a classroom where we've added extra highly energetic students who don't have assigned seats. They're just free to move around and carry electric current. Here, negatively charged electrons are what we call the majority carriers. Then we have our second character, the P-type semiconductor. This time, we dope the silicon with atoms that only have 3 outer electrons, like boron. This actually creates an empty space in the crystal structure, which physicists call a hole. It's literally missing an electron. Imagine a row of chairs with one empty seat. If a student shifts over to fill that empty seat, the empty seat appears to physically move down the row, right? While these moving holes act just like positively charged particles, making them the majority carriers in our P-type material. Which brings us to Section 4, the magical PN junction. So what happens when we literally smashed these two highly engineered materials together? Well, let's step through the physics, because this is the absolute heart of modern electronics, the p-n junction. The moment you physically join a p-type and an n-type material, nature immediately wants to balance things out. The extra electrons from the n side diffuse over to the p side, and the holes diffuse the other way. When they meet, they recombine and basically cancel each other out. Because all the free-moving charges in the middle just vanished, they leave behind fixed, charged ions that create an internal electric field. This middle area is now completely depleted of free carriers, which is exactly why we call it the depletion region. It acts as a built-in insulating barrier.
And this is where it gets really fun. We get to play with it by attaching a battery. If we hook up the positive terminal to the P side and the negative to the N side, we create a forward bias. The voltage pushes the particles toward the junction, that depletion region narrows, the barrier drops, and boom, a large electric current flows. But if we flip the battery around for a reverse bias, the voltage pulls the particles away from the junction. The depletion region gets huge, the barrier rises, and the current is completely blocked. No way through.
What we've just built here is a diode. By exploiting that forward and reverse bias, a diode acts as a one-way gate for electricity. It's like a turnstile. People can walk through it one way, but it locks up if they try to go backward. Engineers use these absolutely everywhere. They use them to convert AC power from your wall into DC power for your laptop, to regulate voltage, and to protect delicate circuits from, say, someone putting batteries in backward. But we didn't stop at just one junction. If you sandwich 3 layers together, say NPN, you get a transistor. And this is arguably one of the greatest inventions in human history. By applying a tiny voltage to the middle layer, you can control a massive current flowing through the whole sandwich. It can amplify a signal, kind of like boosting the volume on your speakers, or it can act as a lightning-fast on and off switch. And that switching, that is the absolute foundation of digital computer code. All those ones and zeros. All right, section 5, the blackboard math. Let's step up to the chalkboard for a second. We've talked concepts, but engineers need math to actually build this stuff. You'll probably recognize Ohm's law up there, V equals IR, showing the basic relationship between voltage, current, and resistance. We also have power equals voltage times current, and energy equals power times time. But the real star of our semiconductor show is that bottom one, the Shockley diode equation. Notice that little e to the power of V? That exponential function beautifully explains why a diode blocks current until it hits a specific threshold voltage, and then suddenly, whoosh, the current shoots straight up. The math perfectly maps to the physical opening of our smart toll gates. And finally, section 6, real-world applications. Let's wipe the chalk off our hands and zoom back out. How do these microscopic physical laws translate into the real world? The short answer, they are literally everywhere. Take your smartphone. It relies on billions of tiny transistors just to process your data. Look at the lights around you. Light-emitting diodes, or LEDs, are just special p-n junctions that release energy as visible light. Solar cells run the exact same process in reverse, taking in light to push electrons and create power. Next-generation electric vehicles are leveraging advanced semiconductors made of silicon carbide and gallium nitride for super-fast charging. From the satellites providing GPS and 5G, all the way to life-saving medical imaging equipment, the entire modern infrastructure hums along on semiconductor physics. And the true marvel of modern engineering is this. We've taken the physical principles of electrons and holes, and we've refined our manufacturing processes in these ultra-clean rooms to the point where we can fit tens of billions of these transistor switches onto a tiny chip of hyper-pure silicon. A chip you can literally balance on the tip of your finger. It's an absolutely staggering achievement. Which leaves us with a massive question to wrap up this explainer. We are making these smart valves so incredibly tiny that they're now just a few atoms wide. So how much smaller can we possibly go before the rules of quantum mechanics shift beneath our feet and electrons just start teleporting straight through our closed gates? That physical limit is fast approaching, and overcoming it, well, that's going to be the next great leap in technology. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into semiconductors. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.